Hey, what's up? Hello, everyone. Welcome into Fantasy Filmball, the show where we turn movies into sports and sports into something we don't talk about here. My name is Matt.
My name is Dylan. Today we are back with another episode. This time it's, maybe a fan favorite episode. We're doing a tier list of the shortlisted specialized categories at the Oscars, kicking things off with international with our expert here. Arno, how are you feeling today? You got 15 movies to tier list.
Yes, and unfortunately I have not seen all of them, but collectively, did we see all of them? I'm not even sure.
No.
I don't think any of us have seen Americazzi.
Or have you seen The Monk and the Gun?
I have not, no.
So none of us have seen The Monk and the Gun or Americazzi. I'm missing 4 right now. I haven't seen The Teacher's Lounge. I haven't seen The Monk and the Gun. I haven't seen Io Capitano, and I have not seen Americazzi. So I hope to rectify that very soon and see all of those films. But right now, I have not.
Yeah.
I've seen 5.
Which ones? You've
on.
seen Perfect Days, Taste of Things, Mariupol.
Yeah, Taste of Things, Perfect Days, Mariupol,
Four Daughters,
and Society of the Snow.
Oh, you saw Society of the Snow. What did you think?
It's not anything special. People who are calling it like a 9 out of 10, I think, are a little excessive, but it's not awful either.
It's at a
I watched it
4.1
last
on
night.
LETTERBOXD.
I don't get
Wild.
it. That said, maybe I'm just on the opposite side of like, this is maybe what people felt about All Quiet last year when I was like, this is great. And everyone else was like, why do people think this is awesome?
It's a solid 7 out of 10 for me.
I do not get when people were trying to make it the next All Quiet on the Western Front. I'm glad that we don't have to pretend that's a possibility anymore now that
The BAFTA shortlist proved that. Yeah.
Exactly. The BAFTA shortlist just like crushed that possibility.
I have seen 9 of these. I have not seen Society of the Snow yet, so you two will have to be the voice of reason for that, or whatever you want to call yourselves. But either way, why don't we jump into the tier list? So at the bottom of the D tier, I have Godland from Iceland, which I've seen, Americazzi from Armenia, which I have not seen, and The Mother of All Lies from Morocco, which none of us have seen.
I've seen it.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so, okay, to comment on your D tier.
Godland so low.
I'm shocked that you have Godland so low, and the only reason I say that, I previously had Godland really, really low, but then I saw that article where it had directors rank their top films of the year. I think it was a Variety article where they asked like 60 directors to give their top 10s. Godland ended up on like 20 of those lists. And when I saw that, I went, oh, highbrow people really like Godland. And we're not seeing that in the critics groups, but we're seeing that with those directors. So I ended up moving Godland up to my number 9 spot. I'm not saying this is a big contender. It would probably be, if I were to tier them out, it would be in a C tier for me. But I do think that Variety article where many, many people were mentioning Godland is enough for me to take notice. I'm also worried with Americazzi, like it feels a little bit like a Corpus Christi type nomination, or like The Man Who Sold His Skin, where it just kind of shows up on the short list without anyone expecting it to, and then it shows up in the nominations just kind of like, whoa, it's there. But you're right, The Mother of All Lies has no shot. I mean, it missed the documentary short list.
That was the biggest sign.
That's the big killer of it.
Regarding Americazzi, it could be that. It could also be, a Blue Kaftan slash, one of these others. What's the film from Panama that was shortlisted?
Plaza Catedral.
Plaza Cathedral. It could be one of those two, and that's kind of where I have it right now. It looks fairly accessible, so I'm not like, it makes sense that it makes the shortlist, even though I didn't originally predict it. And then regarding Godland, I look at the shortlist, and apart from Godland and Totem, which both happen to be Janus films, it really seems like there's a theme going on here. It seems like they want something short and sweet, accessible for the most part. Even if something's going to be hard, like telling an immigrant story with Io Capitano, it has to be somewhat accessible. And Godland just doesn't fit that bill. I see what you're saying, but having seen the film, I know how long and how slow and how demanding that film is, even if it's beautiful and very rich. So that's why I think it has no shot.
Maybe it would have a better shot if they didn't already have a long, slow, inaccessible art house film as the number 1 in the category. Without the zone of interest, maybe Godland would have more of a shot.
It's one of those films that I think is really cool to see it make the short list, but I really don't see it going beyond that.
So we've got down to your 13 slot. So what is next in your C tier?
So in the C tier, I have The Monk and the Gun from Bhutan, The Promised Land from Denmark, Io Capitano from Italy, And then topping off the tier, we have the 2 remaining documentaries, 20 Days in Mariupol from Ukraine and 4 Daughters from Tunisia.
I'm a little surprised that you have 20 Days in Mariupol that low, because that's at your, like, what, number 9 spot? It feels like the winner of the doc category, and it's so important that I could see this show up just off of, like, a, oh my god, we need to talk about how brutal this film is.
To back Arno up here, I also have 20 Days down in this range a little bit. I just feel like if they're going to go for the doc, they're going to go with the other one. And still this year, like I mentioned before, is just so stacked. It's so... It just has so many things where I don't know if that movie can make it into an international feature lineup when it's very much just a documentary. It's a very good documentary. It's a very important documentary. It's one that stays with you a long time. But at the same time, at least as a viewer, if I was like making these categories myself, I probably wouldn't put this into an international feature lineup, but it would probably top my documentary lineup.
What we've learned from The Mother of All Lies is that even if the same kind of body nominates films and they're 2 different bodies shortlisting films, is that there can be different tendencies when looking at international and when looking at documentary, because The Mother of All Lies only made one of the 2 categories, the one it was arguably less likely to make in the first place. I respect that you would put 20 Days higher given that you're so certain that it will win. I'm not yet certain it will win, so that influences my ranking here. If you ask me what's winning documentary right now, I wouldn't be able to give you an answer. I think 20 Days is definitely going to be nominated, and it's a very high possibility to win, but I don't think it's a runaway winner. We haven't seen a lot of documentaries make international, and this is, as we've discussed before, a very journalism heavy movie.
Yeah, and the docs that do make international usually have like a story like Flea, where if you watch that, yeah, you can get it's a doc, but at the same time it has a very engaging and ripping story throughout that would stand on its own without the documentary angle, where something like 4 Daughters, I feel it kind of fits that more, where it has
Honeyland
that story to propel
feels
it.
like it could almost be a narrative film, and then Collective, which is the one kind of journalism movie, was in a weaker year.
That is the thing that I was going to fall back on here, which is Collective was very much not that Honeyland Flea style of nomination. But yes, it was a weaker year. I don't have 20 Days in Mariupol in my top 5 right now, but I could very easily see it happen. I currently have it ranked number 6. Maybe number 6 is pushing it a little bit. I maybe should have it at number 7. But yeah, I think it's a little bit wild that you're both thinking that 4 Daughters has more of a shot, despite being definitely not as close to winning the documentary category.
I mean, to reference back to Flea, I think Flea had no shot to win doc, but had an angle to win international, where
but
here
Summer
again,
of Soul wasn't in international.
I know, but I'm just saying, like, a movie that couldn't win its main category, you could say, but still has a shot to make a nomination and maybe even compete as an upset win in another category, where 4 Daughters, I think, has a long shot. I think could be that number 5 slot, especially if we need non-European films, where this year we don't have that many in the upper echelon. I would say we have like 3.
Monk and the Gun, I'm just kind of writing off. I think Lunana was a fluke, and I don't think that we're going to see that happen again. I'm also kind of writing off Io Capitano at this time.
I am. It's
And
on my 10.
it's my number 11 right now.
There are a lot of films, even in just the short list, that really fit the bill as this feels like an Oscar nomination, but there are only 5 slots. Io Capitano, I watched it. It really does look like an Oscar-nominated film, but then I look at the competition and I'm like, but it's not as much as those films. Monk and the Gun looks like it could replicate the success of Lunana because it has that similar sensibility, tendency, but can we know that for sure? Lunana feels like it was kind of like a lightning in a bottle kind of thing going on, whereas we were really hearing already from people watching the films on the shortlist, like there was incredible buzz behind that film, which we're not hearing about for Monk and the Gun. So even if it seems like it could be that kind of film, right now, I don't think we have enough proof to warrant putting it higher than the C tier.
So what is in your B tier?
So B tier for me is like could be nominated, and you'll notice I have 5 more films in the B tier, which means that there's only 2 films in the A and S tier. So right now I think that the last 3 slots in international are mostly between these 5 films, although I'm still taking the risk of having Four Daughters at the bottom. But if you're being realistic, these are the 5 films to consider for the last 3 slots. At the bottom of my B tier, I have Fallen Leaves from Finland,
Ooh,
followed by
bold.
Totem
I like it.
from Mexico,
Nice.
followed
nice.
by Perfect Days from Japan.
Whoa.
And then The Teacher's
Is Perfect
Lounge
Days 6
from
or
Germany,
5?
and topping off the D tier, La Passion de Dodin Buffon from France.
Okay, we have to tackle the fact that you have Fallen Leaves in your 7th place. That is audacious. It's bold. I respect it. I like it. I have it in the exact same place because despite the fact that it made Golden Globe, made Critics' Choice, it feels like it has inched itself up to be the prime snub. Usually we see one of these films where it performs extremely well at some of these other groups and then misses the Oscars, and Fallen Leaves feels exactly like that to me
This
year.
is compartment number 6.
Or
And
a hero.
And here's the thing is that people say, oh, but look, it performed so well at Golden Globes. I was really impressed to see its performance at the Golden Globes as well. And I was like, okay, but let's see the overlap between Golden Globes and Academy of Awards in this category. And
Not much.
generally, surprisingly enough, there's only about 2 to 3 films overlapping. It's not that consistent. So people were like, oh no, this film missed, but this film got in. Io Capitano, we gotta take this seriously. Guys, it's not that big a deal. Fallen Leaves is that film this year. I guarantee it.
To back you up there, Globes have 6 this year. So if we're saying 2 or 3, let's take out 1. Io Capitano probably wouldn't be nominated if it was only 5. Past Lives is ineligible. You have 4 movies. If you're going to take another one off, it's probably Fallen Leaves, and that leaves you with your big 3. And Anatomy's out too, so that leaves you with your main 2 being Zone and Society.
At first, when The Taste of Things missed the Golden Globes, I was like, oh shit, this is being set up to be this year's like Decision to Leave, where it misses the Oscars eventually. And then I was like, oh wait, actually, no, I feel like the thing that misses the Oscar is going to be the thing that people are now predicting like crazy because it made the Golden Globes. So yeah, Fallen Leaves, I completely agree. It's going to be the shocking snub that happens on Oscar nomination morning that no one sees coming, even though like the signs were all there that it wasn't happening.
Speaking of Decision to Leave, I think this year's kind of like critics' favorite film that some people think could sneak into the 5 international, but ultimately won't, is Totem.
I want to put Totem in. I just don't know what to take out because I have 4 Daughters. I have another movie that you haven't mentioned yet being my 2 non-European films. Can I fit 3? And if I don't, which of the 2 do I take?
With Totem, I guess it hasn't been performing as well with critics as I kind of expected it to be. But I'm looking for those 2 non-European films, and Totem just feels kind of right for that at this point. And same with Perfect Days. The other thing I like to balance is I like to balance 3 can picks with 2 non-can picks. So having Perfect Days and Taste of Things and Zone of Interest in makes so much sense for me.
Here's something that's kind of like a weirdly arbitrary kind of metric that I've started to think about, is that usually in my last few years of predicting this category, I've put a certain number of Cannes films, and the result is always 1 less Cannes film than I predict. Like last year, I predicted 3 Cannes films to get in there, wound up being 2. This year, I was thinking of predicting 4 Cannes films, and so therefore, I should be predicting 3. It's kind of a weird metric, which is why right now I'm still kind of going by the general kind of like, let's try to do 3 European and 2 non-European, which is why I think that The Taste of Things is going to be one of the Cannes picks. And I think that right now I have 4 Daughters being my last Cannes pick, but it could still be Perfect Days. In fact, Perfect Days would be the smarter move. I'm just kind of taking a risk here. My 2 non-Cannes picks, one of them I think is going to be The Teacher's Lounge. It made the BAFTA shortlist, and I think it's going to have a resurgence now that it's finally coming out, and that
Sony Pictures
Classics is pushing it right now pretty hard.
That's interesting because I've kind of been writing off The Teacher's Lounge for months now. I hope to see it in the next couple of days. But we'll have to see. Maybe I should be giving it more credit. But if I were to put it into my top 5, I would have to take out one of my big 3, which is Taste of Things, and then 2 films you haven't talked about yet, being Society of the Snow and Zone of Interest.
So, A tier time. What is A? What is S?
I only have 1 film in the A tier and 1 film in the S tier. because I don't think there's anything that's secure beyond Society of the Snow. And then there's nothing like Zone of Interest right now that deserves to be in the S tier. Of course, because it is towards the bottom of the Best Picture lineup right now, hovering between, let's say, 9, 10, 11, 12, something like that. And then it looks quite likely to be that 5th director slot right now. And then not to mention other categories. This deserves to be in the S tier. And Society of Snow is probably the only other film I feel is secure for a nomination. There's no way this misses at this point for all the reasons we've already stated.
I think the best thing to do now is just to say what are our projected 5 at this moment, and then like one alternative we could see be like a possible upset. So I guess, Arno, you should go first, because I know that you kind of mentioned it before, but just to make it official right
Yeah,
here.
so I'll just officially state my top 5. So I have The Zone of Interest and Society of the Snow as my 2 secure picks for a nomination. Then I have The Taste of Things, The Teacher's Lounge. If you're going safe, go Perfect Days, but I'm going to stick with my guts and go with Four Daughters to be a international and documentary nomination film. In my lineup, I have 3 Cannes films and 4 European films, which is not ideal, but something could be swapped out.
Last year, we did see a lineup that had 4 European films, so it's possible. It doesn't happen every year. Again, most years we get 3 European films, 2 non-European films, but who knows? Maybe Society of the Snow kind of counts, because despite the production being Spanish, it is a story set in Argentina and Chile, starring a cast of Uruguayan actors, so maybe it counts. I'm not too sure. On the other hand, I have the same top 2 as you. I think these are undeniable: The Zone of Interest and Society of the Snow. And then afterwards, I follow that up with Perfect Days as my number 3 contender, Taste of Things at number 4, and then I'm going with Totem as my number 5. But if one of those were to miss, I would see it miss for 20 Days in Mariupol, which I do feel much more confident than either of you guys do. Especially, I couldn't reconcile having Four Daughters make international and then have 20 Days in Mariupol win documentary.
Currently, I guess I also have Zone and Society as my 1 and 2, but this is where I differ a little bit. I'm very confident of Perfect Days, Taste of Things, Fallen Leaves. 1 or 2 will miss. Currently, I'm projecting both Fallen Leaves and Perfect Days to be on the outside looking in. Taste of Things is my 3, Totem is my 4, and Four Daughters is my 5. But that could easily be switched going forward. I just see Perfect Days miss the Globe. I see it miss the BAFTA shortlist. I see Yakusho miss the actor, and just see that the European body may not like this movie, and that could be an angle for a possible just major snub. It's probably my favorite movie of the ones that I have seen in this category. I haven't seen Zone yet, but I don't know, just the signs are kind of there. And I previously had Taste of Things out, but I don't know if I feel good about having 3 non-European and only 2 European movies in compared to having 3 and 2. I know it does happen, and maybe going forward, maybe I'll switch Perfect Days back in and take out Taste of Things, because previously I had that as like the major snub. But on this day, I have Perfect Days as the big one, and I guess Fallen Leaves, but I've never really bit into Fallen Leaves. It's never been higher than 6 for me.
Here's the thing, it's that it's a small and slight film, right? It's a fun watch as you do it, and critics are falling in love with it, fair enough. But I think the Academy ultimately will be like, oh, what was that film again? Oh yeah, I watched it. That was nice, I guess. But I want to nominate an important film. This is important. The Teacher's Lounge is about teachers having to deal with these issues. This is important. Four Daughters is about, ISIS recruitment. This is important.
Hey, man.
Things like that.
You talk about important, and you've got 20 Days in Mariupol in this category.
Hey,
yeah, but that's a documentary.
Yeah,
so is
I
Four
think
Daughters.
I think there's a world where Four Daughters makes international, but misses doc. Mariupol makes doc, but misses international. That's currently what I have at this moment.
I could see that happen, actually. I do have Four Daughters in doc, but I could see it miss doc if it makes international. But I think that's a great transition to go over to the documentary category. So, Arno, let's start off with the D tier right here.
Once again, going from bottom to top in more or less the order of likelihood of being nominated. In the D tier, I can't even read this title.
Desperate Souls, Dark City, and The Legend of Midnight Cowboy.
Wow, it's going to make the lineup.
Followed, how did this get shortlisted? I don't know.
What is this
Followed by
film?
A Still Small Voice, then In the Rear View, and then 32 Sounds at the top of the D tier.
My lord, Arno, we have the exact same order at the bottom.
No way.
Exact same order.
Is 32 Sounds the one where it's all about like audio and like it plays with like the channels, or is that a different doc?
I believe
No,
so.
that's the one, I think.
Yeah, I believe so.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, I would maybe put bottom of C, but top of D is basically the same thing.
So it's being described as an immersive sound experience. It's a sensory experience. Here's my thing. If it's being billed as this immersive sensory experience, it sounds like you kind of need to experience it in a theater. And to me, that actually hits it worse because a lot of the documentary voters are probably not going to be located in Los Angeles with access to screenings of this. So if they're watching it on the Academy screening room, that is a big hit against it, and I think it's right to be in the D tier because of that.
Yeah, I mean, there's the headphones argument. I've just heard really positive things. I haven't watched it myself, but I've heard from like 5 to 10 people, but all of them seem to really, really love it and think it's super immersive. But again, if it was this big, it probably would make the sound shortlist, like how the David Bowie one made it last year. So I guess it's maybe not that strong. I've just heard positive things, but again, it's very
even
limited
then,
quantity.
like Welcome to Chechnya made VFX shortlist and wasn't nominated. So I don't know how much that impacts it. I just think that even beyond all those arguments, it's a film that, you know, maybe it's, oh, wow, that's so cool, I'm hearing all these things. But, like, when it comes to actually nominating films, well, they think that it's much of a film beyond, you know, like, its audio experiments.
I have it at 11, so I don't
know.
have it very high, but still, I would have it higher than, like, Gold Derby currently has it at 15, so, like, I would have it higher than them.
Yeah.
What? It has it at 50. It
To
has
briefly-
it below Desperate Souls, Dark City, and The Legend
13.
of Midnight Cowboy? What?
13
Oh, my.
What's 14?
Wow.
in the rear view.
Whoa.
I mean, in the rear view, like, the reason it seems like a very good doc, the reason I have it low is because it's a Ukraine doc, and I feel like people are good with 20 Days in Mariupol.
Yes.
They're like, all right, we got this covered. You could make the argument of, like, oh, in 2019, we had both The Cave and For Sama as Syria docs, but, like, those were both very high-profile docs that were both incredibly pushed, whereas in the rear view, it's not being pushed very much. It was kind of a surprise shortlist mention.
So let's move into the C tier and see maybe if we start to differ a little bit.
All right, so at the bottom of C tier, I have Apollonia, followed by Stamped from the Beginning, followed by To Kill a Tiger, and topping off my C tier, I have Bobby Wine, the People's President.
I have these exact ones too, but in a slightly different order, because I have Stamped from the Beginning at the very bottom of this, especially after seeing Stamped from the Beginning. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet.
I've not.
It's very conventional, and it's stuff that we've seen before many, many times. There's no new ground that this is breaking that I haven't seen in other documentaries, such as, like, 13th. And even when 13th came out, people were saying, like, oh, this doesn't feel like it's treading any new territory. It's just, like, the same information. I feel like this story and this info has been done much better by many other documentaries. I am a little bit more confident in Apollonia. I have it at my number 9 slot.
I did too.
I don't know much about this documentary. I haven't seen it. I haven't done much research into it, but it has been getting some mentions in interesting places, such as the Indie Spirits.
I'm not quite as confident, mostly because it is essentially an artist portrait. And I know there's a political side to it, of course, but it is an artist portrait film. And it's from Denmark. And we already have a lot of foreign documentaries this year. And I really don't see this one breaking out. I think if anything were to break out and go a little bit further above, it will be US or English language documentaries. Yeah. So that's why I'm kind of putting it a little bit lower. I have some faith in Bobby Wine because it is the one National Geographic film that is in this shortlist. They are pretty good and pretty reliable at campaigning. That being said, this film doesn't seem like their most promising contender, which is why I have it in the C tier, but it's not impossible.
I agree.
think
it's up there.
We continue our trend of being in like the same realm, because like Matt, I would have Stamped from the Beginning at the bottom here. I'd probably have it below 32 Sounds in that same like bottom C, top D. Then I would have The Tiger. Then at 9 would be Apollonia. 8 Bobby Wine, with the potential to go up. So it seems like we're all pretty much in the same boat now. We have our top 7, where I think our real nomination contenders could be, where I do think maybe Apollonia and Bobby Wine have like a small shot, but I wouldn't put them in this next tier.
Arno, have you seen To Kill a Tiger yet?
Nope.
Okay, because I just watched it, and I was honestly pretty underwhelmed. I'm actually pretty surprised that this made the shortlist. It's a great story. It's just I found it to be pretty bland in the execution and the presentation of it.
So To Kill the Tiger won a lot of festival awards and a lot of People's Choice Awards and those kinds of awards. And it feels like the kind of film that even if I am to take your word, I haven't seen the film, but if I am to take your word that it's not that great of a film in its form and in its execution, it is a film that gets people rousing about like injustice. You know, it angers people about what is happening. We know that anger motivates.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of film that, you know, maybe is an underdog to sneak in there because because people will feel passionate about the subject matter or something like that.
So now to dive into the B tier, I know I'm going to be pretty different than you two here, most likely, because I have some, I think, major snubs and some pretty wild things in my top 5. But Arno, take it away.
So I have 4 films in the B tier, and again, like for international films, the B tier for me are films I think could get nominated. These are the films that are fighting for kind of the last 2 slots in my mind. So at number 7, I'm so sorry, Dylan, American Symphony. At number 6, I have The Eternal Memory, followed by Still, a Michael J. Fox story, and then Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni project.
Interesting that you have American Symphony at number 7. I do agree that it's kind of a fringe nomination because as we see year in, year out, the Oscars don't really like to go for these musician profile movies. The last time that they did was Amy in 2015. So this is not the type of
And even
movie
then, that was like
typically...
footage, right?
It was archive
stock
footage, whereas American Symphony is following him around as he's going through a year in his life, basically. That said, if it does get nominated, it could be a winning contender. Actually, before, I had still a Michael J. Fox movie as my second place to 20 Days in Mariupol, and after watching American Symphony, I swapped it around. I think one of these 2 movies, either Still or American Symphony, one of them is getting nominated and one of them is missing.
I would agree with that, and I am in the same boat as you, Matt, with which one is in and which one is out. I also have Eternal Memory getting in, and then I have Going to Mars getting in just because, yes, it is a bio of someone, but not someone that a lot of people know. And I think like Mars and Bobby Wine are kind of fighting for the 5th slot of being like these people that we don't really know that are like celebrities, but aren't like A-list celebrities like Michael J. Fox or John Baptiste.
Going to Mars also has the bonus of being in English, which, that definitely will help with a lot of these. Arno, have you seen American Symphony yet?
There's a lot of films that I still haven't seen, American Symphony included.
I doubted American Symphony until I saw it. And then I was like, oh, this isn't just another, like, The Boy from Medellin from Matthew Heineman. There's much more to it. I expected exactly what I got from Still a Michael J. Fox movie, which is like, yeah, that was cute. And I learned about Michael J. Fox, and I saw footage from movies that I know.
Having not seen American Symphony, the thing that kind of worries me about the film is that to me, like on the surface, from what I've seen, it looks like a puff piece about, I'm this, world-renowned musician, John Baptiste, but look, guys, I had to deal with my wife getting cancer. Look how hard it was for me. And I did all that and still got a Grammy. Look at this. That's the kind of vibe I get out of it, and that's what kind of worries me. But I'll give you... I trust your opinion, so I will see it and with the benefit of the doubt.
You could see it that way. However, I think the difference is that the way that Matthew Heineman shoots it, it's not really from Batiste's perspective. It's not like him being like, oh, look at how I went through all these hard things. It's more about the irony of life and how in your happiest moments, your most triumphant moments, when your life is going so well, it's also possible that you could be watching someone that you love going through the worst time in their whole life. That objective perspective helps a lot. Batiste is not the narrator of the film. Matthew Heineman's camera is really capturing stuff kind of from a little bit of a distance, which helps with that. It doesn't feel self-centered or egotistical at all.
It's as much about his wife as it is about him. I think there's parts of this where it's not a John Baptiste doc.
I do agree with your sentiment about, if American Symphony gets nominated, it has the potential to win because most years, even if we have like extremely powerful, really strong documentaries, not in the English language, they tend not to win. We have My Octopus Teacher beating all the other films in that field, including Collective, that was nominated in International.
To be honest, watching 20 Days in Mariupol, I'm pretty sure this is in more English than not. Like, I know like the requirements is it's probably not, but it felt like it was more in English than it was.
It's because it's narrated in English.
Which I think won't be an issue for voters. Like, I don't think like, oh, it's not in English, I'm not going to watch it. I think the issue is just going to be feeling good about voting it or
Yes.
making it through the movie,
Well-
where American Symphony is a movie where you watch and you're like, yeah, this makes me feel good. This
And
is my
this
number
is
one.
the thing that we see every single year, which is the final two in Best Documentary always comes down to a choice between, do we want to make a politically important statement, or do we want to award something that makes us feel good and feel happy? We see
Yeah.
Summer of Soul versus Flea. We see Icarus versus Faces Places, in which the foreign language film there, the French film, was the feel-good movie, and the political film was eventually the one that ended up winning in the end. My Octopus Teacher, Collective, every year, year in, year out, we see that battle happen between something a little bit more light and something a little bit heavier that makes a statement.
And that's kind of what I'm looking for, because right now our top contenders are mostly, it seems, foreign language films, even if they are American, like Beyond Utopia. And I'm kind of looking for that American film or that English language film to sneak in and just like end up being that front runner. That's why I have Going to Mars and Still a Michael J. Fox Story as kind of like my bottom two picks to get nominated, because if those films actually wind up getting that nomination, they could maybe, again, I haven't seen them, but they could maybe be like the favorite for, the kind of populist favorite in that crowd.
Yeah.
And this goes against what I've been saying every year, because Still a Michael J. Fox Story is a film that was in the premiere section of Sundance. And I keep telling people those films don't get nominated. And I'm making an exception with this one. The same way that RBG was one of those rare exceptions in the last 15 years. Maybe this could happen, but I have it at my number 5 because it goes against everything I've been preaching. And I shouldn't be doing that because the films that get nominated from Sundance are in the competitive categories. They're not in the premiere sections. And every time people think, oh, but this film is really good, it always gets proven wrong. Maybe this one's different. Maybe I'm just trying to reach for something that isn't happening.
Well, Still a Michael J. Fox movie does fit the bill of the Apollo 11, the Won't You Be My Neighbor. It's a Sundance premiere, wins all the critics' prizes, and it just misses.
But if it gets nominated, it is shooting up.
But that's the thing, is if either, I disagree that Going to Mars could be that one. It's a little bit too cerebral, I think, to be that feel-good populist contender. So I think it's 20 Days in Mariupol versus whichever one of the two gets nominated, American Symphony or Still a Michael J. Fox movie. That's the top two.
Fair enough.
And
I
the
can get
only thing
behind
is
that.
we don't know whether it's going to be American Symphony or Still a Michael J. Fox movie. Or maybe a miracle happens and both make it in. The past will tell us that that's not what happens.
My A tier, and even though I could say 1, 2, 3, to me they're all three of them are pretty much on equal footing with each other. So they are Beyond Utopia, Four Daughters, and 20 Days in Mariupol. I think they are, I wouldn't say guaranteed a nomination, because the documentary field is so weird sometimes. They are, to me, the likeliest films to be nominated this time. They're having the best awards attention at the moment, I would argue. Even though Beyond Utopia is an American film, all three of those films are foreign language films. It's weird to not have an American film or an English language film in the A tier, but that is our current situation.
We've just said that the reason why that is because we don't know which of those American films is
Exactly.
going to be. So, when those nominations come out, I think it's clear that our A tier changes to be Mariupol versus one other.
So I think it's time for us to just dive into what we think our 5 is in the category. I mentioned mine before. I have Mariupol, American Symphony, Eternal Memory, Four Daughters, and Going to Mars as my 5.
So for me, my top 5 is 20 Days in Mariupol, American Symphony, Beyond Utopia, Four Daughters, and Going to Mars. I do have The Eternal Memory missing, and I do have Still a Michael J. Fox movie missing. I forgot to mention, the other thing in American Symphony's favor is it did get the PGA nomination, while Still a Michael J. Fox movie did miss that.
I have, right now, 20 Days in Mariupol, Four Daughters, Beyond Utopia, Going to Mars, the Nikki Giovanni Project, and Still a Michael J. Fox Story. It feels weird for me not to have the Eternal Memory in there. That feels like it definitely should be in there, but I can't fit it in right now. And American Symphony, I think, is very likely to get in, but I don't have it at this very moment.
I'm shocked that we all have Going to Mars, and I feel like that's one that not many people are predicting.
Look, Brother Bro convinced me on it. He's been talking this one up for a while now, so
I mean,
contender,
it did win the documentary prize at Sundance, the highest documentary prize for the U.S. section. What kind of feels weird about my lineup right now is that I have 4 Sundance films, which might be a little much. I mean, there is always a very big lineup of Sundance films, but 4 might be a tad too, like maybe 1 too many.
Let's dive into animated feature, because I mean, there's no shortlist here, there's no top 15, but we kind of have a sense for what the major ones are in the race. So Arno, you want to take us away with what your D tier is?
So like last year, I have made a selection of 15 films from the list of animated films that qualified for the Oscars, so we know these could theoretically be nominated. Some films that are not on this list could also theoretically be nominated, but I tried to pick the 15 most likeliest, more or less. So in the D tier, I currently have Deep Sea, Migration, The First Slam Dunk, and Trolls Band Together.
Oh yeah. That should be getting a nomination in a Just World, but the Academy, they're cowards.
that makes sense for a D tier. I mean, it's clear that Migration is not the Illumination movie that people are prioritizing. Even if the movie that people are prioritizing is also not going to get a nomination.
Is Leo on your list, or do you not
It
have
is
that in the
not
top
on my
15?
list. I thought it was
Interesting.
just like no shot.
I would say
I mean,
Leo should probably be above Deep Sea.
I would agree. I there's people who love Leo out there, and it's Netflix. And I feel like if animation did get a short list, Netflix would always be like 3-4 movies deep in that short list.
I would have had it number 16, but like
Fair enough.
I really don't think Deep Sea is getting nominated, but sometimes the Academy will pull something out of their hat, you know, from like a foreign kind of interesting looking animated film. It's not going to be Deep Sea if they do that though.
Here we go. Next tier, we still have all the under 100 to 1 odds on Gold Derby still alive in your list, so interested to see what you have in the C tier.
So in the C tier, I have 5 films, starting off with Chicken Nugget 2, followed by Susumi, and then I have the Super Mario Brothers movie, and just above it, I have Wish. And topping off the C tier, I haven't even seen it, but I thought this had much more potential, but ultimately it seems kind of low-key dead now, The Peasants.
Oh no, you can't put the Peasants over Wish.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. The Peasants being over those is a little bit egregious to me, just because the Peasants missing that shortlist for international feature makes it like, is this even on the radar? Whereas, you know, something like Wish has shown up on Critics' Choice, Golden Globes. It will likely not be nominated at the Oscars because, you know, the Critics' Choice and Golden Globes are just going to nominate whatever. They're like, oh, it's a Disney movie, let's go for it. The Oscars are going to be more discerning. But when The Peasants can't even make the BAFTA shortlist, while Wish did, and while Chicken Run did, I would say that those films should be above The Peasants.
I don't think it's gonna happen ultimately, but like I just don't believe in Super Mario, period. And
Yes.
Wish, I think, was
Fair.
a phase. I don't know how it got on the BAFTA shortlist, but I think it was a phase. This was a box office flop. Maybe it did a
Wish
little
Vengers.
better in Britain, so maybe they don't see it that way as much. But like, it's universally panned. Sorry, Dylan, but it is.
The BAFTA are
and then
part of the Wish
Peasants,
Vengers.
like, I don't believe in it, but there's something about it that still feels like it could be Academy friendly, but maybe you're right. Maybe I'm just trying to see too much into it.
Here's the thing about Wish. A lot of these groups are nominating it because it's almost a name check. It's like they feel wrong not nominating the Disney 100 film. And the thing about the Oscars is that they can nominate the Disney 100 film. In fact, they're going to give an Oscar to the Disney 100 film. It just happens that it's the short film Once Upon a Studio and not the feature film Wish. Wish is going to be left out because they can honor Disney's 100 in a different way. I honestly think there's even a universe where Elemental gets left out. Also worth mentioning, BAFTA gives even less of a shit about animated films than the Oscars do. Look at their shortlist, it's garbage. And every year you look back at their nominations and it's garbage, garbage, garbage. BAFTA's not a huge thing to look at. So yeah, I'm not too caught up on that.
Looking at international and documentary, we talk about how stacked these categories are. I think animation this year is super weak. I mean,
Yeah, it's
we're
fucking
probably
awful.
going to get a Netflix movie, but neither Netflix movie has really connected anywhere on the circuit so far. And that's one of the reasons why I still believe Wish has a shot, just because it has hit places. It's a movie that you haven't mentioned yet that I know Matt just took in our recent waiver draft, which also hasn't really hit anywhere in the industry so far. I know it's done well with critics groups, but the industry hasn't really paid it mind of day yet.
I hope it's going to open at the right time. But, you know, Oscar nominations are pretty soon. I guess I'll start the B tier, because at the bottom of the B tier, I have Robot Dreams, followed by Nimona, which is actually, incidentally, my number 5. Then I have TMNT Mutant Mayhem. And then topping off the B tier, I have Elemental,
which I think is a great place to put it. I do believe the top 3 are pretty locked, barring some crazy occurrence. I do agree Elemental's weak, but this year, what's the alternative? They're not nominating both Netflix movies. They're not going to put TMNT and Wish in there. And then, like, if Robot Dreams gets in, they just won't do the populist choice.
It's still, like, a little shaky.
It is.
It's not, like, guaranteed, but it's probably third in line.
You have to keep in mind that, like, Elemental was not liked by critics. I know families absolutely adore it, and it is Pixar, so it's possible to just name check it, but it has very similar reception to Pixar movies that have missed in the past, such as Monsters University, Finding Dory, and Disney films that have missed in the past, such as Frozen 2. Like, those films... now, it also is
All
quite
sequels.
similar to Onward. Yes, those are all sequels. That is a great point. I'd say it's in the same place as Onward, where it's just a really weak year for animation, and most years it would not be included. But if we were to say, you know, what is taking out Elemental, I could see a world where our top 5 is the top 2 films that haven't been mentioned yet, and then we get TMNT, Nimona, Robot Dreams, and Elemental gets left out. The thing with Robot Dreams that you mentioned is it going to open at the right time? Are people going to take notice? I think what the big selling point here is if it is in that Annie 5 for independent feature, then I feel like it has a good shot. But it's performing extremely well with critics.
It's going to get in that Annie 5. And I know we keep saying that it's a weak year for animation, and granted, I have not seen a lot of these films, but, like, you can always make a good year in animation if you just choose your films. And, of course, unfortunately, the Oscars and, like, almost any voting body is just going to prioritize the big studio films or the English language films, and that's just kind of the world we live in. That being said, though, Robot Dreams, it's a silent film. It is a Spanish-French co-production, but this is a US 80s New York nostalgia fest. There's so many things I think older voters are going to be like, oh, I remember that kind of time. I remember these kinds of things. They might just go for it, especially since by the end, you're just like, it's a beautiful kind of bittersweet finale, and this is the kind of film, an animated film that makes me feel good and that my kid also happens to like.
Just to circle back to, I guess, the critical reception for Elemental, I mean, it's certified fresh right now. I mean, it started off really low, but as we talked about with the box office, it continued to go up and up and up, where maybe it has a sour taste from before, but its current critical perception is a lot higher than some of these other contenders. Plus, I mean, isn't animation a category where anyone can vote on? So it's not just the branch being like, oh yeah, we like the critic pick. It's the populace. They're going to go with the, like what Arno was talking about, the popular movies, where I just don't think Robot Dreams is even in contention. I just don't think the majority of the Academy has seen it, where they have seen Chicken Nugget 2, or they've seen Wish, or they've seen Elemental, where maybe these aren't like the 90 plus critical movies, but they're good enough to coast in.
This is the biggest problem with this category, is that year after year, we have the voters voting on it just don't care about the category. And it's such a problem because they have an animation branch, and yet they made it so that they don't vote. I think the reason that they made it that they're not the only ones that vote for animated feature is because they were frustrated that year after year, the animated branch was choosing interesting films instead of the popular films. So yes, if Robot Dreams misses, it's exclusively because they have opened it up to people that do not care about animation as an art form. So I don't know. I think you're being a little harsh by saying Robot Dreams isn't even in contention. If you look at the results at all these other critic groups and everything, I know this isn't a critic group, but people are seeing Robot Dreams. People are talking about Robot Dreams. It is in the conversation, and the industry is going to be watching that film. The question is just, you know, are we going to get a solid lineup, or is this going to be the worst lineup since 2017 when we had The Boss Baby and Ferdinand?
I have it at 8 right now, but I just believe if it was more of a serious contender, it would have gotten over Suzume at the Globe, and then it would have shown like, hey, industry people do know about the movie.
I disagree, because the Globes, they always nominate one movie that's just like not in the conversation. Remember when they did My Sunny Maud?
Exactly.
Like, they always nominate one weird movie that is not what the Oscars are going to do eventually.
I'll cave if Robot Dreams makes the BAFTA lineup before, because then it would show it's stronger than
it's not
the
shortlisted
Netflix
at the
movies.
BAFTAs.
Oh,
that's
then,
one
yeah,
thing I will
proves
say.
my point more. Yeah,
I will say it's not
doesn't care.
shortlisted.
People haven't seen it.
The BAFTAs are, again, they don't care about animation. Interesting films that have showed up every year. Last year, Marcel the Shell with Shoes On did make both Oscar and BAFTA, which would be a point in comparison for
And
Robot
Globe.
Dreams. Yes, and Globe. The year before, Flea made both. Okay, so my point is
And
not
Globe.
being made here. Wolfwalkers made
Globe.
both. Interestingly, Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon did not make BAFTA, but it did make the Oscar. 2019, here's a cool nomination that happened at the Oscars, but not at the BAFTAs. I Lost My Body. Was not at the BAFTAs, but it was at the Oscars. I don't think that made the Globe, though. In 2018, they had Mirai at the Oscars, but they did not have it at the BAFTAs.
So I know it's been a little while, but if we look at I Lost My Body and Mirai, those are kind of similar to Robot Dreams in that those are films that are a little bit, outside the norm of what is done for mainstream audiences, both premiering at Cannes, just like Robot Dreams, and now having a release at the right time, I suppose. So that's another argument towards that film.
Yeah, I guess if we go to 2019, the Globe didn't have space because they nominated The Lion King. Wow, what an inspired pick. But they did have Mirai the year before in 2018.
Oh, they did have Mirai at the Globes. Oh.
And they had Loving Vincent, they had My Life as a Zucchini, they had Shaun the Sheep, Anomalisa. It goes back. If the movie is a critical pick, it does find its way into the Globe lineup.
Okay, maybe I'm just
especially in a year of
then.
6. A year of 6 at the Globes, there's no reason Robot Dreams should have missed for something
And-
like Wish.
And I guess the other thing is that, we keep talking about this new Globes voting body. So why, if this is a new Globes voting body that's more sophisticated, why are they nominating Wish and Super Mario?
Because clearly
Wish is
they
good.
haven't
Wish is good.
learned about animation. In the A tier, I only have one film. It's The Boy and the Heron. And in S tier, I have... Does this deserve S tier? It's being
Yes.
more and more debatable,
Yes.
but I'll put in the S tier. S
It
for
does.
Spider-Man into
I
the
don't think it's
Spider-Verse.
It's S tier because not only is it an animated, it is going to be nominated for visual effects. It is going to be nominated for score. So
Is
with
it though?
those two,
Is it though?
I think so. I
This
agree
could
with
be
Arno.
Pinocchio. This really
No.
could be
No, no,
Pinocchio.
no.
But still,
Here-
if it's Pinocchio, it's still S tier.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. True, but the fact that it made the BAFTA long list for visual effects as well as the Oscar short list, it feels increasingly likely that it makes it in there. And for score, it is all over the place. Now, I know that you guys are going to say Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio, that got nominated for score everywhere and then it missed. But I'd say the difference is that Pinocchio was a musical and people weren't talking about the music as a focal point of it, despite it being a musical. Spider-Verse would not make sense to miss score.
So I think we should go into our lineups now. I've kind of talked about mine before. I have Spider-Verse, I have Boy and the Heron, I have both Disney movies, Elemental and Wish.
No.
And my 5th slot
No.
is a Netflix slot, and I currently have Chicken Nugget 2 as
what
my
the-
number 5.
Dylan,
I think it
what's
gets
going
BAFTA.
on?
I think it
What's
hits the
going
BAFTA
on?
4. I think the BAFTA 4 is going to be Spider-Verse, Boy and the Heron, Elemental, Chicken Run 2, and that will carry over to the Oscar, and then the Oscar will nominate Wish. If TMNT was for real, it would have hit Globe, and I feel the same about Robot Dreams and Nimona. I feel like with a lineup of 6, there's no reason for those 3 movies to miss for Wish if it was a more prominent film in the race.
You're just actively predicting the worst lineup for this category of all time.
I would disagree because I like all these movies besides Chicken Run.
No, but it's fair that you like them. I'm talking critical reception. If you look at the critical reception of those films, it would be the lowest scoring on average category of all time.
Stats are meant to be broken is what we always say, and this just seems likely because the movies that have the good critical reception aren't hitting at places where they kind of need to hit. Obviously, we haven't had the Annies yet. Annies come in, they can change my opinion on stuff. If we have an Nimona sweep, if Team and T's everywhere, if Wish is blanketed, Chicken Run's blanketed, I'll switch up. But last year, I had faith in Sea Beast and I dropped it because it wasn't looking as great, even though it had hit the stuff. People were like, no, it's Wendell and Wild. And then
You're going to have learned the wrong lesson, and you're going to regret it.
I just think that this branch is lame, it's not even a branch, it's the Academy. The Academy's lame. They will go for what they know. They prove it every year. Since the switch has been made, they don't take risk. A risk would be Robot Dreams. And TMNT, I would love for it to be in. It would be my 2nd favorite film in the category, 3rd favorite film in the category.
Well, my top 5 is Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, The Boy and the Heron, Elemental, Robot Dreams, and TMNT Mutant Mayhem. We could not be more different, Dylan.
That's
I'm also
the fun of
predicting
it.
the things that I think would be really cool nominations. Now, that said, if one of these misses, I could see Robot Dreams or TMNT be replaced with Nimona. I do not think Wish is happening. You make a really good point that Chicken Run is likely to get that BAFTA nomination. However, back in 2020, Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon did not get a BAFTA nomination. It did end up getting the Oscar nomination, but it was not nominated at BAFTA, even though it was an Aardman film. So Chicken Run is not guaranteed to get BAFTA anyways.
It's not, but I have it in just because of the weak lineup.
So my 5 is Spider-Man, Boy and the Heron. We all have those two as our
Easy.
top spots. It's no debate. They're both locked in to get nominations. If you don't have that, there's a problem. Then I have Elemental, TMNT, and Nimona, which to me is a bit of a boring lineup. But I have Robot Dreams, like, ready to sneak in and snipe one of those last 3 films. Maybe TMNT, maybe Nimona, but Nimona has Netflix. I'm not sure. But Robot Dreams is right there. It could sneak in there. But I think they might go for the boring lineup, unfortunately.
I mean,
Hope it's not the crazy, awful, boring lineup, including Wish.
y'all can hate Wish all you want. Wish is
I
fun.
will.
But I still think a Netflix movie has to be here. I will gladly like if no Netflix movies make it in, because I think both those Netflix movies are pretty bad. But I think one of them is making it in, and I think Chicken Run, if it makes the BAFTA, secures itself in. If it misses the BAFTA, like Shaun the Sheep, then it's an open discussion. But at the moment, I'm leaning Chicken Run 2 because it's familiar. It's Aardman. They like it. They usually have a stop motion movie in if there's one in the race, and this is the one this year.
Anyways, that brings us to the end of all of these tier lists, rankings for these specialized categories. I want to thank Arno for coming and helping again, all the way out there in France right now. So merci beaucoup for coming out today.
Ça fait plaisir.
Thanks everyone for watching. As always, my name's Matt.
My name is Dyl, and this is Fantasy Filmball.